The massive ship moved through space like a floating city. Its hull gleamed with silver metal that seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars. Energy shields rippled around it in waves of blue and purple. This was the Cosmic Dominion, flagship, of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. Admiral Vexithera stood on the bridge, her 4 arms crossed behind her back. Her scaled skin was deep green, and her large yellow eyes watched the view screen with cold interest. Around her, dozens of officers worked at control panels that glowed with soft light. The bridge was 3 times larger than most buildings on primitive worlds. "Admiral," called her first officer, Kextan, "we have detected 6 unknown vessels ahead. They are moving toward the Kepler sector boundary." Vexithera moved to the command chair, her tail swishing behind her. The chair was made from crystal that had been mined from the heart of a dead star. It cost more than most planets earned in a year. "Show me," she ordered. The main screen changed to show 6 small ships floating in the darkness. They looked crude and simple compared to the elegant Zephyrian vessels. Their hulls were gray metal that had been welded together in straight lines. No energy shields protected them. No graceful curves made them beautiful to look at. "Analysis," Vexithara demanded. A science officer touched his control panel. Numbers and data appeared on smaller screens around the bridge. "The ships appear to be made of steel alloy, Admiral. Very primitive. We detect no quantum crystalline hull plating, no gravitational drive systems. They are using simple chemical rockets for movement," another officer spoke up. "Admiral, we detect no faster-than-light communication systems. They are using basic radio waves. Their weapons appear to be kinetic projectiles, metal slugs fired from magnetic rails." Vexithera laughed. The sound was like water running over rocks. "How primitive. What species could be so backward?" "Unknown, Admiral. We have no record of these ship designs in our database. Scan for life. Signs." "Yes, Admiral. We detect carbon-based life forms. They appear to breathe oxygen and nitrogen. Body temperature suggests warm-blooded mammals." Vexithera settled back in her crystal chair. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 800 years. They had conquered 847 star systems. Every species they met either surrendered quickly or was destroyed. These primitive aliens would be no different. "Open a communication channel," she ordered. The communication officer worked at his station. "Channel open, Admiral." Vexithera spoke in the common galactic language. Her voice was transmitted across space to the small fleet ahead. "Unknown vessels, you have entered space claimed by the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. I am Admiral Vexithera of the Imperial Navy. You will immediately surrender your ships and submit to Imperial authority. You have 1 standard time unit to respond." The bridge fell silent. All the officers waited to hear the response from the primitive aliens. Most species begged for mercy when they first met the Empire. Some tried to run away. A few were brave, enough to ask for terms. None had ever laughed. The communication system crackled with static. Then a voice came through, speaking the common language with a strange accent. "Admiral Vexithara, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Indomitable. Thank you for the warm welcome to your part of space." Vexithara frowned. The alien's tone was too casual, too relaxed. Where was the fear? Where was the respect? The voice continued. "I'm afraid we can't surrender our ships, Admiral. These vessels belong to the Terran Defense Force, and we have orders to continue our mission." "Your mission is over," Vexithara replied. Her voice became harder. "You face the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender now or be destroyed." There was a pause. Then the human voice came back, and there was something in it that made Vexithara's scales prickle with unease. "Admiral, you might want to reconsider. We haven't had a good fight in weeks." The bridge erupted in surprised voices. Officers looked at each other with wide eyes. No one had ever responded to an Imperial ultimatum with such calm confidence. Vexithara's yellow eyes narrowed. Did this primitive just threaten me? Her first officer checked his instruments. "Admiral, our sensors show no additional ships in the area, no hidden weapons, no support fleets, just those 6 small vessels." The Admiral stood up from her chair. Her forearms spread wide in a gesture of disbelief. 6 ships against the entire 5th Imperial Battle Group? Are these creatures insane? Perhaps they do not understand our power, suggested the science officer. Their technology is so primitive, they may not comprehend what our weapons can do. Vexithara walked to the forward viewport. Beyond the transparent metal, she could see stars scattered like diamonds on black cloth. Somewhere in that darkness, 6 small ships dared to challenge an empire. Show them, she said quietly. Admiral, show them our power. Activate the external illumination. Let them see what they face. The communication officer touched his controls. Outside the cosmic dominion, massive floodlights came to life. The beams swept across space, revealing the true size of the Zephyrian fleet. 12 warships hung in formation around the flagship. Each one was larger than the biggest human vessel. Their hulls were covered in weapon ports and shield generators. Energy cannons that could crack planets were aimed forward. Missile launchers held torpedoes that could destroy moons. The largest escort ship was the heavy cruiser Stellar Wrath. Its hull was black as night, covered in armor that could turn aside the strongest attacks. Captain Zekmor commanded that vessel, and he had never lost a battle. Surely now they will see reason, said Kextan. The communication system crackled again. The human voice returned, and this time there was definitely amusement in it. Nice. Light show, Admiral, very impressive. But if you think those big ships scare us, you don't know much about humans. Vexithara felt something she had not experienced in many years. Uncertainty. These aliens called themselves humans, and they seemed completely unafraid of superior firepower. Either they were the bravest species in the galaxy, or the most foolish. Human, she said, putting contempt into her voice. Your species will submit to the Empire, or your species will cease to exist. I offer you one final chance to surrender. Admiral, came the reply, I appreciate the offer, but humans have a saying, freedom is not free. We'd rather fight than kneel. Then you will die. Maybe. But Admiral? The human voice paused, and when it continued, there was something cold in it. Something that reminded Vexithara of winter winds on her homeworld. If we die, we're taking some of you with us. The communication channel went silent. Vexithara stared at the view screen showing the 6 human ships. They looked so small and helpless. But the confidence in that human voice made her uneasy. In 800 years of conquest, no species had ever sounded so certain of victory while facing such overwhelming odds. Admiral, said her weapons officer, all ships report ready for battle. Shall I give the order to fire? Vexithara considered. Destroying 6 primitive ships would take only moments. Her fleet carried enough firepower to sterilize planets. These humans with their crude technology would be scattered atoms in seconds. So why did she feel like she was making a mistake? Not yet, she said finally. Send the Stellar Wrath forward. Captain Zekmor can handle 6 primitive vessels alone. Let these humans see Imperial power up close before they die. As the black hull of the heavy cruiser moved toward the human fleet, Vexithara wondered what kind of species chose death over surrender. She was about to find out. Captain Zekmor felt the familiar rush of excitement as his ship moved away from the main fleet. The Stellar Wrath was his pride, a heavy cruiser that had destroyed rebel fleets across the galaxy. Its quantum disruptors could tear apart enemy shields like paper. Its photon lance could cut through the thickest armor. Sir, called his weapons officer, we are approaching optimal firing range. Zekmor studied the tactical display. The 6 human ships were spread out in what looked like a defensive formation. They were small targets, but his gunners were the best in the Imperial Navy. This would be over quickly. Humans, he said into the communication system, I am Captain Zekmor of the Imperial Heavy Cruiser Stellar Wrath. You have 30 seconds to abandon your ships. After that, I will demonstrate why the Zephyrian Empire rules the stars. The human response came from the nearest ship, a boxy vessel that looked like a cargo hauler. Captain, this is Commander Rodriguez of the UES Defiance. Thanks for the warning, but we'll pass on abandoning ship. Humans don't run from bullies. Zekmor's scales darkened with anger. Bullies. You face the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Advanced? The human sounded amused. Captain, you're flying around in a fancy ship that probably costs more than our entire fleet. But you know what? Sometimes expensive doesn't mean better. The human ships began to move. To Zekmor's surprise, they scattered in different directions instead of staying together for mutual support. It looked like panic, but something about their movement patterns seemed too organized for random flight. Sir, reported the navigation officer, the humans are breaking formation. They appear to be fleeing. Pursue the nearest one, Zekmor ordered. We'll destroy them one by one. The stellar wrath turned toward the ship called Defiance. It was moving away at maximum speed, but the human vessel was much slower than the Zephyrian cruiser. Within minutes, the Defiance would be in range of the main guns. Sir, said the weapons officer, quantum disruptors are charged and ready. Photon lance is online. Target is locked. Zekmor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Fire quantum disruptors. Show these primitives the power of Imperial technology. Blue energy beams shot out from the stellar wrath. They struck the Defiance and bounced off. The human ship's hull glowed briefly where the beams hit, but there was no damage. What? Zekmor stared at his instruments. How is that possible? Sir, our disruptors had no effect. The human ship appears to have some kind of reflective coating on its hull. Impossible. Quantum disruptors can penetrate any known material. His science officer was working frantically at his station. Sir, I'm reading the composition of their hull plating. It's just steel, basic iron and carbon alloy with traces of other metals. Steel reflects quantum disruptors? No, sir, it shouldn't, but somehow their steel does. Zekmor felt a chill run down his spine. Steel was the most primitive material for spacecraft construction. Every civilized species had abandoned it thousands of years ago. How could simple steel stop advanced Imperial weapons? Fire the photon lance, he ordered. The main weapon of the stellar wrath came to life. A beam of pure energy shot across space toward the fleeing human ship. This weapon could cut through the armor of Imperial dreadnoughts. No primitive ship could survive it. The beam struck the Defiance in the center of its hull. For a moment, the human ship glowed like a small star. Then the light faded, and the ship continued flying as if nothing had happened. Report! Zekmor shouted. Sir, no damage to the target. Our photon lance appears to have been absorbed somehow. Absorbed by steel plating? Sir, I don't understand it either, but the humans seem to have found a way to make primitive materials resist our weapons. Zekmor felt sweat on his scales despite the cool air of the bridge. This was impossible. The Empire's weapons were based on quantum physics and exotic matter. They had been tested against every known material in the galaxy. Steel should offer no protection at all. The Defiance suddenly changed direction. Instead of running away, it turned and began flying directly toward the stellar wrath. Sir, called the navigation officer, the human ship is approaching us at full speed. They're trying to ram us, Zekmor realized. All weapons fire at will, destroy that ship before it reaches us. Every gun on the stellar wrath opened fire. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled the space between the two ships. But the human vessel flew through the storm of fire like it was made of light instead of matter. Weapons that could level cities had no effect on the simple steel hull. Sir, 30 seconds to impact. Zekmor's mind raced. The Defiance was much smaller than his ship, but at this speed the collision would still cause serious damage. And if the humans had modified their hull to resist energy weapons, what other surprises might they have? Evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Tuyu. Stellar Wrath was a powerful warship, but it was not built for quick turns. It began to move out of the way, but the human ship adjusted its course to follow. Sir, the human vessel is matching our movements. They're still on a collision course. 10 seconds to impact. On the main screen, Zekmor could see the human ship, growing larger. Its boxy hull filled more and more of the view. He could make out details now. Weapon ports, sensor arrays, and something else that made his blood freeze. Painted on the side of the ship in large letters was a human phrase, "Death before dishonor." 5 seconds. At the last moment, the human ship opened like a flower. panels on its hull slid back, revealing the interior. But instead of cargo holds or crew quarters, Zekmore saw rows upon rows of cylindrical objects with pointed noses. "Missiles!" screamed his weapons officer. But they weren't missiles. As the Defiance struck the stellar wrath, Zekmore realized what the humans had done. The ship wasn't just a ramming weapon. It was a giant bomb. The explosion was unlike anything Zekmore had ever seen. Instead of the clean, bright flash of Imperial weapons, this was raw and violent. Nuclear fire mixed with antimatter cascaded over the stellar wrath. The ship's energy shields, designed to stop the most advanced weapons in the galaxy, offered no protection against such primitive, brutal force. The blast tore through the hull like it was made of paper. Emergency alarms screamed as atmosphere rushed out into space. Zekmore was thrown from his chair as the ship spun out of control. "Damage report," he shouted over the noise. "Sir, we've lost main power. Hull breaches on 17 decks. The quantum reactor is offline." Through the smoke and sparks on his bridge, Zekmore saw something that made him doubt his own eyes. The human ship was gone, destroyed in the explosion it had caused. But floating in space near the wreckage were dozens of small pods. "Sir, I'm detecting life signs in those pods." The human crew evacuated before the collision. It had been a trap. The humans had turned their own ship into a weapon, escaped at the last second, and crippled one of the Empire's finest warships with materials that cost less than the Stellar Wrath's communication system. The communication channel crackled to life. It was the voice of Commander Chen from the human flagship. "Captain Zekmore, I hope your crew is all right. We don't like killing people, even Imperial ones. But we really don't like bullies who threaten innocent ships." Zekmore found his voice. "How? Our shields should have stopped any primitive weapon." "Captain, you made the same mistake your admiral did. You assumed primitive means weak. Human engineers have been working with steel for thousands of years. We know things about it that your fancy computers never figured out." "That's impossible, is it, Captain? What's the one thing your advanced shields can't stop?" Zekmore thought frantically. Zephyrian shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, stop projectiles, and absorb exotic matter attacks. They were the finest defensive technology in the galaxy. "I don't know," he admitted. "Kinetic energy, Captain. Pure, simple, physical force. Your shields can stop a quantum disruptor, but they can't stop a big piece of metal moving really fast. And when that metal is full of nuclear bombs..." Chen's voice trailed off meaningfully. Around the crippled Stellar Wrath, the other 5 human ships moved into view. They looked just as primitive as before, but now Zekmore saw them differently. Each one was a potential bomb. Each one carried death wrapped in simple steel. "You rely too much on fancy technology, Captain," Chen continued. "Sometimes the old ways work best. Sometimes you don't need quantum physics to win a fight. Sometimes you just need courage and a willingness to do what's necessary." As rescue ships from the Imperial fleet moved toward the Stellar Wrath, Zekmore stared at the human vessels on his screen. For 800 years, the Zephyrian Empire had conquered species by demonstrating superior technology. But what did you do when the enemy didn't care about your technology? What did you do when they turned their weakness into strength? For the first time in his military career, Captain Zekmore was afraid. Admiral Vexithera watched the rescue ships pull survivors from the crippled Stellar Wrath. Her flagship's medical bay was filling with wounded Imperial sailors. Captain Zekmore was alive but badly injured. His ship would never fight again. "How?" she whispered to herself. "How did 6 primitive ships destroy our finest heavy cruiser?" Her first officer, Kexten, approached with a data pad. His scales were pale with shock. "Admiral, our analysis of the battle is complete. The humans used their ship as a guided bomb. They filled it with nuclear warheads and antimatter charges." "Suicide attacks," Vexithara said with disgust. "How uncivilized." "Admiral, that's not the worst part. Our intelligence officers have been studying the wreckage. The human ship wasn't built for war. It was a cargo hauler that they modified for combat." Vexithara's yellow eyes widened. "A cargo ship did this?" "Yes, Admiral. They removed the cargo holds and filled the space with explosives. But here's what concerns me most. They had escape pods hidden throughout the ship. every crew member survived. They planned this, Vexithara realized. From the beginning, they intended to sacrifice their ship. "Admiral," called the communication officer. "The humans are transmitting again." On screen. The face that appeared was human female, with dark skin and short black hair. Her eyes were the color of Earth's sky, and they held no fear despite facing the combined firepower of 11 Imperial warships. "Admiral Vexithara, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the UES Indomitable. I'm sorry about your ship. We tried to warn you." Vexithara leaned forward in her crystal chair. "Commander Chen, your people have just committed an act of war against the Zephyrian Empire. Surrender now and I will show mercy to your survivors." Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Admiral, you attacked us first. We just defended ourselves, and honestly, your ship attacked one cargo hauler and lost. Are you sure you want to continue this fight?" "One ship." Vexithara's voice rose in anger. "You destroyed one ship with a cowardly suicide attack. I still have 11 warships, each more powerful than your entire fleet." "Do you?" Chen asked calmly. Before Vexithara could answer, alarms began sounding throughout her flagship. Her tactical officer shouted over the noise. "Admiral, multiple contacts approaching from hyperspace. Unknown ships are jumping in all around us." The main view screen changed to show the tactical display. Red dots appeared in space around the Imperial fleet, dozens of them, then hundreds. Within seconds, the Zephyrian ships were surrounded by a massive human armada. 200 ships, breathed the tactical officer. "Admiral, we count 200 human vessels." Vexithara stared at the display in disbelief. Each red dot represented a human ship. They had appeared without warning, their primitive technology somehow avoiding the Empire's advanced sensors until the last moment. "Impossible," she whispered. "Where did they come from?" Commander Chen's image was still on the communication screen. Her smile had grown wider. "Admiral, did you really think 6 ships were all humanity could send? We've been preparing for this meeting for a long time." A new voice joined the transmission, older, more authoritative. "Admiral Vexithara, this is Fleet Admiral Catherine Singh of the Terran Defense Force. You are surrounded and outgunned. I suggest you consider your options carefully." Vexithara looked at her tactical display again. The human ships didn't look like any fleet formation she had ever seen. Instead of neat rows and organized squadrons, they swarmed around the Imperial vessels like angry insects. Some were as small as fighters. Others were massive bulk haulers that dwarfed even her flagship. "Admiral Singh," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "You may have more ships, but the Zephyrian Empire has superior technology. Our weapons and shields are far advanced beyond your primitive systems." "Are they?" Singh asked. "Admiral, your advanced shields couldn't stop one cargo ship full of nuclear bombs. How do you think they'll handle 200? Our shields were caught off guard by your suicide attack. Now that we know your tactics, we can adapt." "Can you?" Singh's voice carried a note of amusement. "Admiral, you're thinking like a civilized species. You're assuming we'll follow the rules of proper warfare, but humans don't play by anyone's rules but their own." Vexithara was about to respond when her communication officer spoke up. "Admiral, we're receiving multiple transmissions from the human fleet. They're not using standard military frequencies." "Put them through." The bridge filled with human voices. They spoke in different languages, used different accents, and came from ships scattered throughout the formation, but all of them carried the same tone of confident determination. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the UES Vengeance. We're ready to ram the nearest Imperial ship on your command. Captain Liu here. Shanghai is loaded with antimatter charges and standing by for kamikaze run. Moscow reporting. Nuclear payload armed and ready. Just point us at a target. Lagos standing by with electromagnetic pulse warheads. We can fry their electronics from here to next week." Vexithara listened to the voices with growing horror. Every human ship was prepared to sacrifice itself. Every crew was ready to die if it meant damaging the Imperial fleet. "You're all insane," she said. Admiral Singh's voice cut through the chatter. "Admiral, humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned something that your empire apparently hasn't. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to protect what matters. What could possibly matter more than your lives? Freedom, Singh said simply. The right to exist without bowing to tyrants. The chance for our children to choose their own path among the stars. Vexithara stood up from her chair. Around her, Imperial officers worked frantically at their stations. They were trying to find a way out of this trap, but the human ships had them completely surrounded. Admiral, reported her weapons officer, all ships are ready to fire. But sir, if we attack, the humans will ram us. At this range, we'll lose most of our fleet even if we destroy them all. And sir, added the intelligence officer, we've been monitoring human communications. They're not using quantum encryption, or even basic military codes. They're talking in plain language on open channels. So, sir, either they're incredibly careless about security, or they want us to hear everything they're saying. Vexithara felt a chill run through her body. The humans were letting the Empire listen to their battle plans. They wanted the Zephyrians to know exactly how prepared they were to die. Admiral Singh, she said, surely we can negotiate. The Empire is willing to discuss terms. Terms? Singh laughed. Admiral, you came here to conquer us. You told us to surrender or die. Those don't sound like the words of someone interested in negotiation. Perhaps I was hasty. Perhaps you were. But Admiral, humans have long memories. We've been watching your empire for 50 years. We know how you treat conquered species. We've seen the slave worlds, the forced labor camps, the planet stripped bare of resources. The tactical display showed human ships moving closer to the Imperial fleet. They didn't advance in formation like a proper military force. Instead, they moved individually, each captain choosing their own approach. It was chaos, but it was organized chaos. Admiral, her tactical officer whispered urgently, the humans are jamming our quantum communication systems. We can't contact Imperial Command. How? They don't have the technology. Sir, they're using brute force electromagnetic interference. It's crude but effective. Our sophisticated systems can't filter out the noise. Vexithara realized with growing panic that the humans had cut off her escape routes and her communications. The Imperial fleet was alone, surrounded by enemies who seemed willing to die for their cause. Admiral Singh, she said, what do you want? What do we want? Singh's voice became hard as steel. We want you to leave our space and never come back. We want your empire to stop enslaving innocent species. We want the galaxy to be free. Impossible. The empire has ruled for 800 years. Empires rise and fall, Admiral. Yours is about to learn that lesson. On the tactical display, the human ships continued their approach. Each one was a potential bomb. Each crew was ready to sacrifice themselves. And there were 200 of them. For the first time in her long military career, Admiral Vexithara understood what it meant to be truly afraid. Admiral Vexithara stared at the tactical display as the human ships moved closer. Each red dot represented a potential suicide attack. 200 bombs disguised as spacecraft, all controlled by crews who seemed eager to die for their cause. Admiral, whispered her first officer, what are your orders? Before she could answer, something impossible happened. The human ships stopped their advance and began to spread out in a different pattern. Instead of preparing for ramming attacks, they were forming what looked like a blockade. Sir, reported the navigation officer, the human ships have taken positions around us, but they're not moving to attack range. What are they doing? Unknown, Admiral, but they're maintaining a perimeter at approximately 50,000 kilometers. Admiral Singh's voice came through the communication system again. Admiral Vexithara, we're going to give you a demonstration. Please observe the asteroid field to your starboard side. Vexithara looked at the display. There was indeed an asteroid field nearby. Chunks of rock left over from a planet that had broken apart millions of years ago. She had paid no attention to it before. Why should I care about rocks in space? Because, Admiral, those rocks are about to show you what human engineering can really do. 12 human ships detached from the main fleet and moved toward the asteroid field. They were smaller vessels looking even more primitive than the others. Their hulls were covered with external equipment that seemed to be bolted on as an afterthought. "Sir," said the science officer, "those human ships are launching some kind of projectiles at the asteroids." On the main screen, Vexithara could see small objects streaking away from the human ships. They looked like simple metal rods no bigger than missiles. But when they struck the asteroids, the results were devastating. The first asteroid, a chunk of rock the size of a small moon, simply disappeared. One moment it was there, the next it was a cloud of glowing particles spreading through space. "What kind of weapon was that?" Vexithara demanded. Her science officer was working frantically at his station. "Admiral, I'm analyzing the energy signature. It wasn't an energy weapon at all, it was just a metal rod moving at incredible speed." "A metal rod?" "Yes, Admiral. Basic iron and steel, accelerated to nearly 1/10 the speed of light. The kinetic energy alone was enough to vaporize the asteroid." Another human ship fired. This time, the target was a cluster of smaller asteroids. The metal rod passed through, all of them in a straight line, leaving nothing but dust. "Sir," breathed the weapons officer, "those are railguns, magnetic rail accelerators, but the power requirements to reach those velocities should be impossible for ships that size." Admiral Singh's voice filled the bridge again. "Admiral, those ships are cargo haulers we converted last month. The railguns are built from materials we mined from our own asteroid belt. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just simple physics applied, with human determination." Vexithara watched in horror as the human ships continued their demonstration. Asteroid after asteroid was destroyed by what were essentially just pieces of metal moving very fast. The Zephyrian Empire's advanced shields and armor would be no more effective against such weapons than the rocks had been. "How do you generate the power?" she asked, genuinely curious despite her fear. "That's the beauty of it, Admiral. We don't need exotic matter or quantum reactors. Each ship has a nuclear fusion plant, the same technology we use to power our cities. Simple, reliable, and powerful enough to accelerate metal to incredible speeds." The demonstration was over. The asteroid field was gone, replaced by a glowing cloud of debris. The human ships returned to their positions around the Imperial fleet. "Now, Admiral," Singh continued, "imagine what those same weapons would do to your ships. Your shields are designed to stop energy beams and exotic particles, but they can't stop a chunk of iron moving at 30,000 kilometers per second." Vexithara felt sweat on her scales, despite the cool air of the bridge. The Empire's military doctrine was based on technological superiority, but the humans had found ways to make primitive technology devastatingly effective. "There's something else you should know," Singh said. "We've been studying your technology for 50 years. "What do you mean?" "Admiral, did you think the Empire conquered 847 star systems without leaving wreckage behind? Every time your ships fought rebels or pirates, some debris was left floating in space. We collected it, we studied it, we learned how it worked." Vexithara's communication officer spoke up urgently. "Admiral, I'm detecting unauthorized access to our computer systems. Something is trying to break through our security protocols." "Human hackers?" "I don't know, sir. The intrusion attempts are coming from multiple sources. They're using some kind of adaptive programming that changes faster than our defenses can respond." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Commander Chen was working at a computer terminal. Her fingers moved quickly over the keys as lines of code scrolled across her screen. "How's it going, Sarah?" asked her second-in-command. "Like taking candy from a baby," Chen replied. "Their security is designed to stop sophisticated AI attacks or quantum infiltration, but we're using basic computer viruses, the kind that existed before they developed their advanced systems." "Will it work?" "Already working. I'm into their navigation computers now. Want to see something funny?" Chen typed a few commands. Throughout the Imperial fleet, something strange began to happen. The ships started to turn away from the human fleet as if they were trying to retreat. "Sir," shouted Vexithara's navigation officer, "our ships are moving without orders. I can't regain control." "How is this possible?" "Admiral," Chen's voice came through the communication system, "we've taken control of your navigation systems. Your ships will go wherever we tell them to go. Our computer security is the most advanced in the galaxy. For advanced attacks, yes. But we're not using advanced attacks. We're using computer viruses that are thousands of years old by galactic standards. Your systems were never designed to defend against such primitive methods. Vexithara watched helplessly as her fleet slowly turned away from the human ships. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was being controlled by primitive computer programs. But that's not all. Singh's voice added, "Chen, show them what else we can do." Suddenly, the Imperial ship's own weapons began to target each other. Point defense systems that were meant to shoot down incoming missiles were now aiming at neighboring Zephyrian vessels. "Sir," screamed the weapons officer, "our guns are active. They're targeting the Eternal Glory." "Override the weapon systems." "I can't, sir. The computers won't respond to my commands." Admiral Singh's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. "Don't worry, Admiral. We're not going to make your ships shoot each other, but we could if we wanted to. Your entire fleet is now under human control." Vexithara slumped in her crystal chair. In less than an hour, her powerful fleet had been reduced to helpless puppets. The humans had used primitive technology to overcome advanced Imperial systems in ways no one had ever imagined. "What do you want?" she asked quietly. "What we've always wanted, Admiral. Freedom. The right to exist without interference from empires that think they own the galaxy. You could have negotiated. You didn't have to resort to warfare." Singh laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Admiral, your first words to us were surrender or be destroyed. Your second action was to send a warship to attack our vessels. When exactly were we supposed to negotiate?" Vexithara had no answer. The Empire had always dealt with new species the same way: demand submission, then enforce it with superior firepower. But the humans had turned that strategy against itself. "Admiral," Singh continued, "your empire has ruled through fear and technological superiority for 800 years. But fear only works when the other side believes you're stronger, and technology is only superior until someone finds a way around it. What happens now? Now, Admiral, you're going to send a message to your Imperial command. You're going to tell them that humanity is not a species to be conquered. We're a species to be respected. And if I refuse, then we keep your ships and you can explain to your superiors how you lost an entire battle group to 6 cargo haulers and some metal rods." Vexithara looked around her bridge. Her officers stared at their useless control panels. Outside, human ships surrounded them like predators around wounded prey. The most advanced fleet in the galaxy had been defeated by primitives who refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. For the first time in Imperial history, a Zephyrian admiral was about to surrender. 6 months later, Admiral Vexithara stood in the ruins of what had once been the Imperial Command Center on Zephyr Prime. The crystal walls were cracked and broken. Emergency lights flickered in the darkness. Outside, she could hear the sound of celebration as another world declared its independence from the Empire. The message she had been forced to send to Imperial Command had changed everything. When the High Council learned that a single human fleet had defeated the 5th Battle Group, panic spread through the Empire like wildfire. Rebellions broke out on dozens of worlds. Allied species began to question their loyalty. The carefully constructed facade of Imperial invincibility crumbled overnight. "Admiral," called a voice behind her. She turned to see Commander Chen approaching through the debris. The human looked tired but satisfied. Her uniform was dirty from days of negotiations and peacekeeping duties. "Commander Chen, I did not expect to see you here. Admiral, I wanted to speak with you before we left this system. My government has some final terms to discuss." Vexithara laughed bitterly. "More terms? You have already dismantled our empire. What more could you possibly want? Actually, we want to help you rebuild." The Zephyrian admiral stared at the human in confusion. "Help us? We tried to conquer your species." "Yes, you did, and you failed. But Admiral, humans don't believe in keeping enemies forever. We believe in giving people a chance to change." Chen pulled out a data pad and handed it to Vexithara. "These are the final terms of the peace treaty. Your people can keep their home worlds and their core systems, but the slave worlds go free. The forced labor camps are shut down, and the Empire agrees to pay reparations to the species you conquered. Impossible. The Empire no longer has the resources for such payments. That's where we come in. Humanity is prepared to help establish a new government on Zephyr Prime. We'll provide food, medical supplies, and technical assistance during the transition period. Vexithara looked at the datapad in disbelief. Why would you help us? We are your enemies. We're your enemies, Chen corrected. Admiral, the war is over. Now we have to figure out how to live together in the same galaxy. Your terms are generous, too generous. What do you really want? Chen smiled. It was a different expression than the cold smile she had worn during the battle. This one was warm, almost friendly. Admiral, humans have learned something during our history. Making enemies is easy. Making friends is harder, but it's much more useful in the long run. Friends? Vexithara's scales changed color with surprise. You want to be friends with the species that tried to enslave you? Not exactly. Friends, no. But partners, maybe. Admiral, your people have been exploring space for thousands of years. You have knowledge and experience that could benefit everyone. It would be a waste to let that disappear just because your government made some bad decisions. Vexithara walked to one of the broken windows and looked out at the city below. Zephyrian civilians were working alongside human engineers to repair damaged buildings. Former Imperial soldiers were helping to distribute food to refugees from the slave worlds. How? Do you do it? She asked quietly. Do what? Forgive. Your species was threatened with extinction, and yet you offer aid to your attackers. How is this possible? Chen joined her at the window. Admiral, humanity has fought a lot of wars. We've learned that hatred is like poison. It hurts the person who carries it more than the person it's aimed at. But surely you must want revenge. Some humans do, Chen admitted. But most of us just want to make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again. The best way to prevent future wars is to help former enemies build better societies. A new voice joined the conversation. Chen's right about that. Both women turned to see Fleet Admiral Singh entering the room. The older human looked around, at the damage with sad eyes. Admiral Singh, Vexithara said formally, I was not expecting you. I wanted to see the Imperial capital before we left. It's important to understand what we're dealing with. And what do you think you're dealing with? Singh studied the broken Zephyrian admiral for a moment. Fear, she said finally. Your empire was built on fear. Fear of being conquered. Fear of being weak. Fear of being alone in a hostile galaxy. Fear is a rational response to danger. Sometimes. But Admiral, when fear becomes the only tool you use to solve problems, it stops being rational and becomes destructive. Singh walked over to a fallen piece of crystal that had once been part of a wall sculpture. She picked it up and examined it carefully. This is beautiful work, she said. Your people are artists as well as warriors, but you've spent so much time conquering others that you forgot how to create. The Empire brought order to the galaxy. The Empire brought uniformity to the galaxy, Singh corrected. That's not the same thing as order. Real order comes from cooperation, not conquest. Vexithara felt something she had never experienced. Before the uncertainty about everything she had believed. The Empire had taught that strength came from dominance, that security came from controlling others. But the humans had defeated the Empire without trying to conquer it. They had shown strength through restraint, security through cooperation. Admiral Singh, she said slowly, what happens to species like mine? We were bred for war. We know no other way of life. Then you learn a new way, Singh replied simply. Admiral, every species in this galaxy was once primitive. Every civilization started with basic tools and simple ideas. Your people can learn to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of conquer. And if we refuse, if some Zephyrians choose to continue fighting, Singh's expression became serious. Then we'll stop them. Admiral, humanity didn't come this far to let new tyrants replace the old ones, but we hope it won't come to that. Chen held up her datapad. Admiral Vexithara, your signature on this treaty means your people have a future. They can rebuild their civilization, explore new worlds, and contribute to galactic society. All they have to do is agree not to enslave other species. Vexithara took the datapad and read through the terms again. They were indeed generous, much more generous than any treaty the Empire had ever offered to defeated enemies. Why? She asked again. Why show mercy to those who showed you none? Because, Singh said, that's what separates civilization from barbarism. The ability to choose mercy when you have the power to choose revenge. Vexithara thought about her homeworld, about the millions of Zephyrians who would suffer if the war continued. She thought about the slave worlds where creatures were finally free to determine their own fate. She thought about the human ships that could have destroyed every Imperial vessel but had chosen instead to capture them. Very well, she said, taking a writing instrument from Chen. I will sign your treaty. As her signature appeared on the document, Chen smiled again. Admiral, I think this is the beginning of something much better than empire. What would you call it? Partnership, cooperation, maybe even friendship in time. Vexithara looked out the window again. In the distance, she could see human and Zephyrian children playing together in a refugee camp. They were using a mix of both languages, creating something new from the combination of their two cultures. Perhaps you're right, she said quietly. Perhaps there is another way. Admiral Singh placed a hand on Vexithara's shoulder. Admiral, the galaxy is big enough for all of us, but only if we work together instead of fighting each other. As the three officers stood in the ruins of the old empire, ships were already leaving Zephyr Prime. Some carried former slaves returning to their home worlds. Others carried human aid workers and Zephyrian volunteers working together to rebuild damaged systems. The empire was dead, but something new was being born, something that would be built on cooperation instead of conquest, on understanding instead of fear. And at the center of it all were the humans, the species that had been dismissed as primitive, but had shown the galaxy what true strength really meant, the strength to choose mercy over revenge, the strength to build bridges instead of walls, the strength to turn enemies into allies. As Commander Chen had said, it was indeed the beginning of something much better than empire. It was the beginning of a galactic community where all species could thrive, and it had all started when humanity grinned at the empire's weakness, not their military weakness, but their weakness of imagination, their inability to see that there might be another way. The humans had shown them that way. Now it was up to everyone else to follow it.